It's a wild world out there, but some worlds are even wilder. Hi, my name is Tyler Hapney, and you're listening to Dungeons and Dystopias. Thank you for listening. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Dungeons and Dystopias. I am your host, Tyler Hapney. I have ran quite a lot of D&D and Cyberpunk Red games. And this podcast is a way for me to sort of reconcile my thoughts on those systems. Once again, I am recording in a completely different room, so if it sounds different from last week, which was once again in a different room, then this one will also, you get the idea. Things are just kind of moving around a lot, which is, keep making it hard to, one, have guests come through, and two, record in general. It took me like 30 minutes to figure this out, but we eventually got this going and running, so I am here, and today we are going to be talking a little bit about Dungeons and Dragons. More specifically, we're actually going to venture forward from D&D 5e and actually look a little bit at D&D 2024 today. I know, shocker. But this is interesting, and this is sort of not exactly the latest piece of D&D news. At the time of recording, we just got the headline that apparently there's a new single-player D&D action game in the works from some of the people who did like God of War and stuff. So, pretty big on that front. However, in terms of the game, this is the latest piece of content we have, and it's, I wanted to comment on it because it's really... It really reminds me of some things from 5e. But today we're going to be talking a little bit about the new Unearthed Arcana, which is playtest material for, I'm going to call it 5.5e. Some people call it D&D 2024. It does not matter what you call it, but it is the newest supposed class. And the reason why I'm saying supposed is because this is not the first time Wizards of the Coast have tried to make a class that is based off of telepathy and being able to work your mind and like psychic powers and stuff. It's a very cool kind of fantasy, but it's one that they've tried and failed before at doing correctly. And for those of you who may remember, the previous attempt at the Psion class was 5e's Mystic class, and that in itself has a lot of, I guess, infamy for being just way too involved, way too crazy. Mystics can basically do anything. It's I don't know. There's a lot that goes into being a mystic that you have to memorize, and the whole class itself was generally very complicated, messy. Some would even call it pretty overpowered. So yeah, we never got the mystic. We got the Unearthed Arcana, which you can always just look back at and have a nice little laugh, a little read through, but we never got that sort of psychic feeling class that they were trying to go for, that psionic stuff. Well, now we have their next attempt at a psionic class, the Psion, and I don't know if this one is necessarily any better. I think it looks on the surface way less complicated. Which is one of the big problems with 5e Mystic, was that the class itself was like 30 pages, which is abnormal for a D&D class. So it seems in D&D 2024, Scions are kind of like a wizard of sorts. They got the D6 hit die. The intelligence is their big stats. Intelligence and wisdom particularly. They share a lot of the skills that wizards get, just stuff like that. But they get stuff called psionic power, which Mystic kind of got. They got something called psi points, and there was a psi limit. But this is obviously a little different in the terms of psionic power, which is you have this wellspring of psionic energy that is represented by an energy dice. So your Psion level, which would be 1 to 20, determines the size. So it could be D6, D8, whatever, of these dice and the amount that you roll. When you finish a short rest, you regain 1 psionic energy die that you've spent, and when you finish a long rest, you gain them all back. So very cool. You also get to start with 2 powers: telekinetic propel, which allows you to take 1 large or smaller creature, and you can push it a total number of feet equal to 5 times whatever you roll on your psionic energy dice. See how that works? So, if I'm a high-level Psion, my psionic energy dice is like a D10, or it goes up to a D12, but we're just going to say D10. We'll pretend I'm like level 11 or something. So let's say I roll an 8 on my D10, and then, that's 5 times 8. That's 40 feet. I'm going to be able to telekinetically propel an enemy, which could be huge. I mean, if you're fighting someone on a cliff, that's game over. if you push them out far enough. The next one is telepathic connection. At this, you get as a bonus action, you can gain telepathy within a range of 5 feet. This obviously does require a psionic energy dice for a number of minutes equal to your Psion level. And then your telepathy increases by 10 feet times the number of psionic energy dice rolled if you're just, if you're using it with a psionic energy dice. So, once again, using that example from earlier, that's an 80 feet telepathic connection, which is pretty crazy. You might have to yell if you're going to be actually talking at that distance. You also get Mage Hand for free, which is cool. That kind of gives it the telepathy sort of thing, the telekinesis. But, it's okay. So now, at level 2, you actually get to choose some of your psionic things that you get that you can spend your energy dice on. You get 2 when you hit level 2, and I'm assuming you get more as you level up. Or it says when you level up, you can swap a known discipline for another. So maybe you can only have 2 at a time. But some of these are pretty cool. One of them is Destructive Thoughts. When a creature succeeds on a saving throw versus a Conjuration or Evocation Psion spell, you can expend a die, and then it will take psychic damage equal to the roll plus your intelligence modifier, no matter what, so long as you use that dice. Ego Whip. When a creature provokes an opportunity attack, roll a die. If it makes an intelligence saving throw, on a failure, its speed is reduced by 10 feet, and it subtracts the die roll from its next damage roll. And this die, the power die, is only expended if it fails the save. So if it succeeds, congratulations, you get that dice back. That's pretty awesome, in my opinion, so far. We also have stuff like Psionic Guards. At the start of your next turn, expend a die to gain immunity to Charmed, Frightened, and Advantage on intelligence saves until your next turn. If you're currently Charmed or Frightened, the effect immediately ends. And, here's the kicker, you can use another discipline on the same turn. So that's pretty cool. And there's so many of them. Those are only like 3 or 4, but it looks to be about like 8 or 10. So it's quite a few. You also get psionic modes, which is basically attack mode, defense mode. Attack mode, all your weapon attacks, science spells, and features ignore resistance to psychic damage. And when you deal damage with a spell, you can expend a psychic energy die to reroll up to a number of damage dice equal to your intelligence modifier. So if you have an intelligence modifier of 5, you can reroll 5 damage dice. That's pretty great. Defense mode. You gain resistance to psychic damage. When you fail an intelligence, wisdom, or charisma saving throw, you may take a reaction, expend a psionic energy dice, or add the number rolled to the save, possibly turning it into a success. You can use this feature twice per long rest. So, you can kind of go between attack mode and defense mode. Attack mode makes your abilities ignore psychic resistance, which is just great, honestly. And then defense mode gives you resistance to psychic and allows you to boost, intelligence, wisdom, charisma saves, which is great. That's really good, and that's level 2. You get that at level 2. Like, already this is feeling a little crazy good. Pretty strong, in my opinion. Next up, Psionic Restoration. After short rest, you can regain half your psionic energy dice, only usable once per long rest. So usually you short rest. We usually do like 2 short rests before a long rest. So that does kind of that's just kind of cool. Um, Level 7, you get something called Psionic Surge. When you roll initiative, you can expend a hit point dice to regain 1 expended use of psionic modes, which is attack mode, defense mode. After rolling 1 or more psionic energy dice, you can expend a hit point die to treat any roll of 1 to 3 as a 4. So, spending your hit point die is honestly kind of an interesting mechanic, all things considered, because that's how a lot of people heal. So you're technically taking away some of your short rest healing in order to get a better initiative, which is interesting. I guess that's a little bit of a gamble, maybe. I don't know. That's kind of interesting how they sort of weave that one in there. I'm interested to see if this makes it to official content, because this is, remember, Unearthed Arcana. This is all basically beta test. It's not even guaranteed to ever become actual like official content. It's them testing the waters and seeing if they can get the psionic stuff right this time. So let's talk a little bit about the NCAP stuff before we talk about some of the subclasses. For one, you get an epic boon at level 19. Or another feat for which you qualify. That's just, I think, something that's been added in D&D 2024. And then with level 20, we get Enkindled Life Force. Once per turn, when you roll a psionic energy dice, you may expend 2 hit points to roll 2 additional psionic energy dice and add them to the total. For a level 20 NCAP, that kind of sucks. Wow, that's, yeah. Cool. You get to spend more, hit dice to roll more psionic energy dice when you're at level 20, and you're already getting, let me check here. How many psionic hit dice do we have? Number of dice. You have 12. You get 12 at level 20. So if you use 2 max hit dice, or whatever, that's honestly that kind of sucks. But you know what? Overall, I'd say the class is not terrible. It doesn't seem as complicated or as broken as Mystic was, but still seems in some areas pretty strong. In some areas, some interesting sort of directions have been taken. So there are Force of Scion subclasses. I'd love to go into each and every one of them, but we do need to get into our Monster of the Week here sometime soon. So we're going to kind of just go through them. You Metamorph. So these, if you've ever played like Divinity Original Sin, this is kind of familiar. Metamorphs can manipulate their flesh like clay. You can turn it into all sorts of different shapes and traits and qualities. And you can use this on your friends as well. So, it's all about morphing the meta, as one might be able to assume. Psywarper. Psywarpers are these people that they're using their psionic abilities to manipulate space between objects. You can teleport, you can create vacuums in space, you can do all sorts of crazy things with your psionic powers that allow you to bend space around you and do all sorts of crazy teleportation stuff. Psykinetic. These people are all about telekinesis. They can manifest as sort of sturdy invisible barriers like shields. They can also hit people with a telekinetic like weapon or a force of some kind, and they can break down doors with their telekinesis and stuff. It's really generally pretty cool stuff that we have seen a lot of, psychic fantasy in media that does have that sort of strength. So it's cool that they're reflecting that in Dungeons and Dragons. And then lastly, we have the subclass Telepath. Telepaths, as it says here, are masters of mind magic. You're able to bolster your own mental defenses, the mental defenses of your allies. You can even get into the heads of people, maybe read their thoughts, or maybe convince them of something, maybe fool them into thinking stuff. All that other stuff you can do with telepathy. It's interesting. All of these different subclasses, I think, give their own special flavor to this psychic class that they're trying to see. So generally, I kind of see what they're going for here. Um, like I said earlier, general review of this is Scion class seems a lot better than Mystic was, at least in terms of reading and understanding. A lot of this seems to just kind of come off as a regular D&D class with a little few, like some extra advanced mechanics added in there. And I think that is really cool. Would I use Scion as is right now? I might, just as like just testing, just to see how it goes. But it would still be with that sort of caveat of, hey, this is playtest content, and any of these features, might be due to change depending on how that goes in game. So that is going to be it for the Scion. We should probably get into our monster of the week. And since we were talking a little bit about telepathy and all of that fun little business, I figured we should probably talk about a monster that has some of those abilities. Today, I would like to talk about one of my favorite and also somewhat least favorite D&D enemies and monsters that you could come across. They're great to fight, really honestly great to throw around a dungeon, but God, looking at them is just so rough. I am talking today about the Mind Witness. Would absolutely encourage you, if you have the ability to Google what one of these things looks like. And for those who can't, allow me to describe. A Mind Witness is a beholder that has been seramorphosized by an Illithid's tadpole. So basically what that means is it's a giant, gross, infected eyeball with a bunch of gross, infected eyeball tentacles coming out of it. And it's obviously I would consider it smarter, probably, than a regular beholder. Just because it does have that Illithid tadpole in it. But it does seem that these things on their own are basically used as a way to kind of enforce the Illithid's telepathic communication sort of network throughout their hive. Because Mind Witnesses are capable of having a telepathic link with up to 7 other creatures simultaneously. So basically, one thing you can do if you have a Mind Flayer colony is set up a bunch of these Mind Witnesses, and they can create a chain of telepathic communication that goes from one side of the colony to another, and you can have basically Mind Flayer telephones out of these Mind Witnesses, which I think is kind of cool. Like imagining a sort of dark, evil Mind Flayer conferring with a Mind Witness in his chamber, and because this Mind Witness has telepathic connection to everything. He's not even talking to the Mind Flayer or the Mind Witness necessarily. He's talking to whoever is communicating through the Mind Witness, which is interesting. Obviously, in D&D, where there are no phones or things like that, this sort of communication is very, I want to say, kind of immersive. It's pretty cool. What can these guys do in combat? Well, they're basically a combination of Mind Flayer and a Beholder. They have eye rays, just like a Beholder, and they have the ability to use psionic blasts and stuff like Illithid. They can even draw brains from people just like an Illithid would. So basically, if you're fighting a Mind Witness, you're fighting a Beholder mixed with a Mind Flayer. And somehow these guys have a lower challenge rating than either of those two monsters. So I don't know, maybe the Illithid Seramorphosis weakens the Mind Witness a bit. Who knows? But either way, all I know is I have personally used Mind Witnesses as a way to flesh out Illithid dungeons before. Also, just as a way to make dungeons look cooler. A bunch of floating Mind Witnesses around? Come on, that's awesome. Obviously, For creatures like this, it is probably important to remember having multiple mind witnesses makes everything all that much better for the colony. So, suggestion from me, if you're going to throw on a mind witness, throw on a couple. At least 7. Maybe not 7. Anyways, that'll be it for us this week. Thank you so much for listening. Next week, we will be talking a little bit about Cyberpunk Red. I might have a guest in if I could figure out all this business with the rooms. Otherwise, I will probably be talking about the new Cyberpunk Red Elflines DLC that just dropped. Very interesting. I don't think we've even talked about Elflines on this podcast yet, so maybe we should have an Elflines episode. Who knows? As for now, though, I'm Tyler Hatney, and this has been Dungeons and Dystopias. Thank you so much for listening.